But before we look ahead, let's look back on the season that was in Portland. In March, Jusuf Nurkic suffered a compound leg fracture, marking the end of his season, including the playoffs. In April, Damian Lillard waved goodbye, and the Oklahoma City Thunder were never the same, thanks to Dame's walk-off three in the first round of the Western Conference playoffs. In May, after beating the Denver Nuggets in 7 games in the Western Conference semifinals, the Blazers were swept by the Warriors in the conference finals. Here's the Blazers' dynamic backcourt on what it'll take to break through in the competitive Western Conference this season.
The past few years for us, people didn't look at us as a real threat, but we went up against teams and this past season was a perfect example. We ended up being one of the Final Four teams, and on paper, you never would have guessed that. So I don't think it's one team. I think it's just the struggle of being in the West.
It'll be tough in the West, but it's always tough. The West is always tough. A lot of teams are good. A lot of teams are deep. Obviously, injuries will play a factor in what happens this year. That's always a factor as the playoffs get closer and closer. It's the team that's the healthiest has the best chance, and hopefully we can be one of those teams that's healthy. We'll all go through that learning phase. All the teams that have new pieces will go through a learning phase where they're figuring each other out, but it'll come down to health and who's available and how you execute.
Underrated, right? At the very least, underappreciated. Take a look at Dame's rankings in these categories since 2013. He ranks second in the league in minutes played, fourth in both points and three-pointers made, and he's tied for sixth in games played. Will he be back in the MVP conversation this season? I'm joined now by our analysts, Greg Anthony, Brian Shaw. Guys, where does Dame sit among the very competitive position at the point guard across the league?
I think he's without a doubt one of the 4 or 5 best point guards in the league. He's an incredible talent. And the point you made about him being I don't necessarily think that he's underrated, but I do think he's underappreciated. The guys know how good Dame Lillard is, and his record does speak for itself. He's a clutch performer. His teams tend to always exceed expectations, and that's really – he's just in a smaller market and maybe doesn't have the same type of aura about his game, but the impact on the floor is as good as any. And I thought last year in that matchup with Russell Westbrook, where they had some back and forth over the regular season, and he had the last laugh. I think that kind of validated for everybody. We all know how special he is as guys within the game, but I think from the fans' perspective now, outside of Portland, they're starting to understand just how special a talent Dame Lillard is.
That's, though, what's difficult, because being in the Western Conference, if you consider him one of the 4 or 5 best point guards in the league, 3 or 4 of those other guys are in the conference, which means you're going to be looking at all-star snubs. You could potentially be in the MVP conversation and still not be one of the guards to represent the West when it comes all-star time. Shaw, do you see it that way?
I do, but I think that, what's happened in the all-star games as well is it's gone more positionless. And I think that's something that we'll see. Definitely the fact that they made it to the Western Conference Finals and he was the point guard on the team that made it to the finals over some of those other point guards that were, typically rated higher than he's rated, goes to show. Being a guy from Oakland, I see him work out in the summertime. And I know how hard he works and the time that he puts in. And I've seen him grow from his days at Weber State to Rookie of the Year to each year just incrementally getting better and better. And, so there's no mistake that his ascension is where it is right now because he does put in the work, and it's no accident.
Well, the Blazers have the most money committed to 2 players on the same team in the NBA. Of course, before you gasp, looking at this, keep in mind these 2 are locked in for the longest. So first, what I want to know, guys, is if you see this investment as the right one long term.
No doubt about it. Listen, they're already proven commodities. They have this, and this year starts it from this standpoint. It's the first year, and Dame talked about it, this is the first year where Portland comes into the regular season as a legitimate title contender. And that was our point. Last year they made it to the Western Conference Finals, but no one saw them as a title contender going into the season. This year, with the moves they made, with the growth of those 2 guys, the fact that they're going to be there long term, the fact that they have that cohesion and relationship with their coach and Terry Stotts, and that they both have arrived. I mean, it speaks to the fact that this team has a chance to win and win now, especially because that Western Conference, because of all the transition, it's still in a state of a flux right now because we don't know how it's going to play out, but they have certainty on their side because their core pieces are there and ready to roll.
And with CJ in particular, he's seen consistent improvement season after season. What impresses you most about his game?
Well, much like Dame, he was underappreciated as well, maybe undervalued. And he's taken steps every single year. People talk about his size, the fact that when he's out there on the court, he plays for himself. I think that when Dame comes off the court, he has the ability to play that point guard position because, let's face it, all the point guards that we see are scorers and can shoot the ball, and he's one of them. So he can go from the 1 to 2, and I think that Portland showed their appreciation for his value and the improvements that he's made by locking him up and giving him the bag. And so for them being in a small market and locking up these two guys, it's great for their franchise to be able to do that.
And, you think about the backcourts. There's two that are what I call organic backcourts, meaning they were both drafted by that organization and they played together their whole career, Steph and Clay, and then these two guys. And the fact that every year they both get better tells you, one, they really like each other. They have great chemistry and trust. And you can't break that up, especially when your ascension is going in the right direction, right? They've gotten better every year. Coming off 53 wins last year, they're going to have a chance to be in the mix, I think, for a 1 seed this year with the moves that they've made. And it's because of that foundation of those two guys. They've got their core. And this is an opportunity where they can look out and say, hey, this could be our year. And I think that confidence is starting to grow for the Blazers.
You've both said it. They've gotten better every year. They made it to the Western Conference Finals last year, and for the first time in a long time, the eventual champion in the NBA does not feel inevitable. It doesn't even feel predictable. Do you think that in this now wide open Western Conference, the Blazers could be the team that represents the West in the NBA Finals?
I absolutely do, because they have that cohesiveness, the familiarity of playing with one another. And with all these other teams, they have guys that are coming to a new situation. So we don't know what to really expect and how long it's going to take them to gel.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that they could. And I think, again, it always starts with your best player. And Dame Lillard, I think Dame's got the chip on his shoulder and the belief that he believes he's the best player in the world. He believes that in his core. And your team feeds off what your best player presents. And those guys have bought in because they've seen the exploits. They've seen all the incredible performances he's had over the years, and they know he's not letting up. And that kind of leadership and the ability to set those examples, I think it's really big for a young team on the come.
Well, when we come back, we'll talk about the pieces surrounding that backcourt, including the Blazers' big men, Zach Collins, Hassan Whiteside, and when we may see Jusuf Nurkic this season. Stay with us. Let's take a look at the Blazers' projected depth chart, headlined, of course, by their backcourt duo in Dame and CJ. Guys, Jusuf Nurkic is still out indefinitely due to the injury he suffered back in the spring. So first and foremost, I want to know what this team is missing without him.
Well, I think he was becoming that third guy offensively that they could count on consistently night in and night out. And, to not have him there, that's going to be a void they have to fill, and it's going to be a challenge for him. I think Whiteside can make up defensively what he brought to the table, and Powell being a great passer will help. But, you want your young studs to continue to grow, and the fact that he's not going to be out there means he's not getting better and building off what happened a season ago, and that's going to be a challenge for the Blazers.
And he was their physical presence, out there on the floor, the physicality that he brought. I had the fortune of coaching him for a year, his rookie year in Denver. He has a very high skill set. He has a high basketball IQ, and I think that he felt comfortable and he felt at home. He felt a niche, filled a niche with that Portland Trailblazer team. And so, they're going to sorely miss that, but hopefully he'll get back soon. But definitely there was a void that needs to be filled once he went down.
GA, the team did pick up its option on Zach Collins, and he said just days ago that his focus this offseason has been offensively. What does this team need from him?
Well, he's a young player that showed a little bit of progress. I will say this, though. I actually think of
some things that can help this team. If he's willing to run the floor, set good screens, be a dynamic roller, and be more mature. I mean, I think this is his time right now. Like I said, it's make or break. And so if he can do that, the sky is the limit for this team, but right now it's a big question mark.
The Blazers also picked up their option on Anthony Simons, and he could be poised for a breakout season, at least if he builds on what I saw at Summer League. I want to know from both of you what your expectations are for his season.
Well, I think that he was a pleasant surprise. He got an opportunity to play at the end of the season and then through Summer League. But in Summer League, the big boys that played during the regular season weren't out there on the floor. But obviously he's a young guy. He's going to continue to improve. I think the performance at the end of the season and Summer League helped his confidence a great deal. And so I'm looking forward to and excited for him getting out there and getting an opportunity to team with Lillard and McCollum.
Yeah, he eventually, I think he really complements those two guys. He's kind of a hybrid because he can play some lead guard, but he can really score the basketball in a similar style of play to what you get with C.J. McCollum. He's just got to mature a little bit more physically, but I do think the confidence that he got from the summer and in being able to practice and work with those two guys is going to, I think, speak volumes for his overall growth. I think he's got a chance to be a really, really special talent. And playing behind those guys for a couple years could be just what the doctor ordered.
Well, on top of these guys, we've talked so much about the Blazers' backcourt, but they also have a lot of depth at the wing position now. Rodney Hood, Kent Bazemore, Mario Hezonja. Do you see the new Blazers in this position as an upgrade?
I do from this standpoint. I think the caliber of basketball IQ I like what Bazemore brings to the table. I think Rodney Hood also, because of his style of play, what I thought they lacked at times with Harkless and Aminu last night was offensive versatility. These guys are better equipped to make basketball plays. And I think sometimes when you're the best players like CJ and also Dame Lillard, when you don't trust those other guys to make plays, you tend to try to do too much. And you end up taking bad shots. You end up turning over a little bit more because the trust wasn't there. I think there'll be a little bit more trust with this wing position now with the moves they've made.
And I think, Hezonja is still a question mark, but he's going to get an opportunity. Bazemore has shown, on the teams that he's been with over the years, that he can get done and you can get it done. You can trust him and rely on him. I think that Rodney Hood is the one who, we've seen flashes at times. We need to see if he can sustain that and be consistent throughout an entire season, especially when he's counted on.
Well, we've gone through position by position the entirety of this Blazers team. Where are they lacking that could keep them from representing the Western Conference?
Well, I still would be a little concerned about their backup positions at the point and the off guard because the guys they're young and they're unproven. And then the wing position is still, even though we talked about it, those are still areas where we don't know if they're ready to get to the next level. Now, everything else is fine. I think the front court's going to be fine. Remember, Pau Gasol's on that roster now, too. I think he'll play well for them. But it's the wing position for me, B, where I think that has to be proven that it's going to be an asset, not a liability.
And for me, it's no question the 5 spot. With Nurkic, being out indefinitely and we don't know when he's going to be back, Hassan Whiteside and what he's done to this point, that to me is where the question is. Pau Gasol's getting a little long in the tooth. He's a great teammate in the locker room, his skill set and everything else, but his best days are definitely behind him. So that area at the 5 spot is where I have the biggest concern.
Long in the tooth, a descriptive way to put it. When we come back, we'll look back on 50 years of the Blazers franchise, including...
What a half for Damian Lillard. Dame time has arrived in this first half. Damian Lillard on fire. 42 points.
Dame front court against Schroeder. Puts his head down, a three-pointer far side.
Shot clock is off. Lillard, long-range three. And it's good! The buzzer! Damian Lillard! Are you kidding me?
An iconic moment, no doubt. But as the Portland Trailblazers celebrate their 50th season in the NBA, the unique link the franchise has with their fans is what has stood the test of time. This franchise is celebrating 50 years, several of which you were a part of. What does this franchise mean to you?
It's so unique. Oftentimes the small market teams do have that real love affair with the franchise. I think in football, I always think of the Packers. In basketball, it's the Blazers. That fan base is, not only are they so passionate, but when they wear their disappointment, they don't forget anything. Brian was just telling a story. He went back to see a Dame Lillard game last season, and they were booing Brian Shaw from what happened back in 2000 when they beat us. It came back in that fourth quarter, and it's always going to have a special place for me. My oldest son was born there. And, so many great memories. I was a part of some really good teams and just loved that entire experience, man. I mean, you know what? I got to clap for the city of Portland. 50 years to have that franchise. It's been an incredible ride.
I guess you were on the other end of those kind of memories with the fans. Yeah.
I was, and actually I was on the Blazers roster the previous year, and then came over to the Lakers roster. But no, that was always a place where when you went and played, you knew that their fan base was going to be behind them, that it was going to be a tough game, but it was the kind of atmosphere that you wanted to play in as a performer out there on the floor. And they are special. They create a unique situation for their team, and I think it reflects in how they play, especially at home.
Well, when we come back, we're going to wrap up your Portland Trailblazers team preview with predictions for the season ahead, the moment you've all been waiting for. Has anybody seen Shaq? Because it looks like Dame is getting in fighting shape, guys. An effective workout, though, right?
Yes, it is.
Boxing is
Very.
a sport.
All right, prediction time.
Serious
number-
about that. Boxer, rapper?
Is 46.5. Now, keep in mind, since boxer, rapper, NBA superstar Damian Lillard has been on the team, they've overachieved each and every single season based on the number they were assigned prior to the season. But that's the one we've got, 46.5. Will they win more or less?
I'm going over. I mean, I think they have a chance to be better than they were a season ago. I think Dame's motivated. I think he also looks at that Western Conference and says, man, this is the best chance we may have had since I've been here. And so I think they get over. Definitely the window is open, and I think 48 wins, so I'm going over. I'm not going to go against the trend of every year he's gone over whatever has been predicted. So
if you think that he's perhaps going over that win total, not he, they are going over that win total. I know if Dame is watching, he'd want me to say it that way. Then how high is their ceiling? What can they achieve this season?
I think they could win the Western Conference.
All right.
I really feel like, again, the chemistry, the trust, I think if the pieces pan out, a lot of times when you make these moves in the offseason, on paper, you're saying, man, if this happens and that happens, we could do it. Those things have to happen. Does Nurkic come back full speed? Does Powell still have enough in the tank? Is Whiteside, is he not a distraction? Is he an asset? Like, a lot of things still have to fall in place, but that is their ceiling.
And I think that what they did last year, I think they overachieved a little bit getting to the Western Conference Finals. But I also think that when they go head-to-head later in the playoffs against a team that has two bigger stars than their stars, that shine is going to take over, and that's where I don't think they'll be able to overcome.
I love it. All right, that'll do it for your Portland Trailblazers team preview. For Greg Anthony, Ryan Shaw, and Kristen Ledlow, thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next time.